Hello and welcome to the 18th episode of When I Was Your Age. I'm your host, Roland Parker, coming to you from an unseasonably warm November day. And as always, it is a joy, pleasure, and a treat to have you here. Today's guest is Haley Gentry, recent graduate of Tulane Law School, and I'm really excited to get talking with her about environmental law, how she got into all of that. Before we get started, chatting it up with her, I do have a little bit of housekeeping for you guys. Make sure that you follow the Instagram at WIWYA pod. Thank you so much for the support. We are currently at 796 followers on Instagram, which is just amazing, continuing to grow each week. If you're listening for the first time, consider giving us a follow, and you can do that in a whole plethora of places. You can do that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. You can subscribe to YouTube, and you can follow on TikTok and Instagram. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You can find the link tree in the Instagram bio, and that will take you to all the relevant places. But without further ado, we'll go ahead and bring Haley onto the stage. Haley, how we feeling? What have you been up to?
We're feeling good. I had a good day at work today. Gave a guest lecture, which is not normally what I do, so that was annoying. And then I ran some errands after work, and then now I'm sitting here in my house in New Orleans.
Nice, love that. So,
Yeah,
what in
that
particular
was
makes
most of
it?
the day.
What in particular makes it a good day of work?
Um, Usually like interacting with people who work in other policy or government positions and kind of having productive, meeting sessions, policy planning, all that. It's kind of hard because like there are little successes in doing water and environmental work, especially in New Orleans, but also like it's kind of heavy and not the
Sure.
most hopeful. It's sad uh, content to deal with a lot. So really, just the people interaction and being around the community makes days a lot better.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. Well, I'm glad that it was a good day today. Um, so let's get to know you a little bit. Where are you from, and where do you currently live?
Born at Brookwood Hospital in Vestavia Hills. Actually, I've been Vestavia till I was 18. But yeah, now I'm in New Orleans, Louisiana. I've been here for about 4.5 years.
Nice, that's awesome. And so, I mean, obviously, we'll touch on living in New Orleans a good bit. I imagine that that's got to be just like the most fun like spot ever to be like
Yeah,
kind of
it's pretty
plugged in.
great.
That's awesome. Well, love that. Real quick, if you guys are not following Haley on Instagram, make sure that you do so at HeyHeyG. That's I feel like that's so funny. Putting people's handles and stuff on the streams and whatnot, because that's a lot of like how I've thought of people for a while. And I feel like yours in particular, I feel like I remember people referring to you as HeyHeyG.
Yeah, especially in track. That's been my Instagram name the whole time since I got it in like ninth grade. I just
Mm.
never can never change it.
That's good. Love that. It's a yeah, I would say keep it forever. It's good.
No.
Um, so what is it exactly that you do?
So I'm in a 2-year postgraduate research fellowship at the Tulane Institute on Water Resources, Law and Policy. So I'm like a year and 3 months into the 2-year program. So essentially, we do like public service work. So it's public research or publicly accessible research, and then work like free of charge for local governments, state government committees. And then we do a lot of work with nonprofits and do advising work. So it's kind of it's not a traditional like job that a lawyer would have at a law school, but it's been really cool to because I do a lot more policy work, which is I think it makes it a lot more interesting and brings a lot of the issues home when you're doing a lot of that stuff, especially in New Orleans, which is already such a big community place anyway. So I primarily work in like wetlands protections, flood protection, insurance, like flood insurance, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Um, we do like environmental law work broadly, but we're really focused on water resources, which touches a lot of things by itself, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. There was The at the farmers market in Maryville, I just remember like our local like Delta, like the water like advocacy group that would come and like talk about the importance of all of their stuff. And yeah, just like the interaction of all those things. But that's awesome. How old are you?
26.
26. Love it. And what
Did
piece
you
of
see me pause and think about it? I was like, oh.
yeah, that's been a running
My
theme
birthday's
for
soon though, so you know.
yeah, absolutely. That's been a running theme for when I ask people is I feel like we've really gotten to the age where it's like you have to double and triple check. 100%. So what piece of media are you currently enjoying? Be that a book, podcast, music, TV, anything like that?
Oh, that's hard. I don't read a lot for fun, being in law, unfortunately. But I just finished watching um, Gen V, which is the
Oh
super
yeah.
spinoff of The Boys. It's a lot, but
Yeah.
if you're okay with that type of thing, it's a good show.
I'm caught up on The Boys. I haven't watched any of Gen V. It is
They tie them together, and apparently the new season of The Boys is going to be kind of coming off the end of the Gen V season. So
nice. Okay, very
yeah,
cool. I love The Boys. It is definitely a hard watch at times. Just different. Yeah, I find myself turning away a lot of
I
times
was
like,
just about to
oh,
say I have like the blanket shield. I'm like, oh no.
oh yeah. Um Definitely. Yeah, they play like fast and loose with the visual effects in that show.
Yeah, that's why I was like, Gen V is almost maybe more. So
Really? Oh man,
yeah,
that's tough.
that is. I finished watching it last night. I also just watched the new season of Big Mouth.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's another one that it's like
yeah. I've been watching fun TV shows this week.
no, that's good. Um, let's see here. What is something that you'd consider a luxurious necessity?
Oh, that's hard.
You want some prompting or examples that we've been
Well, I'm
given?
looking right here. A high quality water bottle or travel mug that is too expensive is something that is always worth having.
Nice. So,
Yeah.
are you a Stanley girly?
A what?
A Stanley?
Oh
Uh,
no.
so
Uh,
what is your water bottle of choice then?
Hydro Flask.
Ah,
Yeah. Also, I guess the luxury, probably Nike sneakers. Those are the two things
mhm,
I feel like I always have to have. I always try to find a way to like wear sneakers to work, which is
nice.
hard to dress up a lot, but they just are so comfortable and look so cool.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
never into them until recently. Now I have Jordans, which like what am I doing having Jordans? But but I love
Yeah,
them.
I say go for it. Do you know what the pair is, like, called? I'm not really familiar with
No, they're like
what they're all
white
called.
and like grayish blue and gray.
Nice.
Very simple. Yeah.
That's something like a subculture that I'd never really found myself, like, getting into. I had a lot of people, like, on my floor, like, freshman year that were, like, big, like, sneakerheads. They're like, "Oh, these are um" these are the Jordan, like, 36s in the tortoise colorway. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible." I love it. I mean, like, I could see how you get into it, but
It
I've
wasn't until
never
after college for me either, which is
Mhm.
the funny part. Like when I was already in my nerd law school mode, was when I was like, I need to look cooler.
Nice. Good deal. So are there, like, a lot of different pairs, or are there just, like, a couple,
Just a
like,
couple.
just, like, a handful that you kinda resort to? I like that. Um, do you have any bits that you're doing?
Honestly, I feel like half the time I'm talking is slightly a bit. Um, right now at work, our jokes are, "We did it, we changed the climate." That's been my bit. I'm like, "Guys, look at all the change. Look
So
at all
we
the"
did it.
You said then seasonally warm November, and I was like, "We did it."
We did it.
Um, yeah, but normally, oh, I have too many bits. I speak for my dog all the time now and change his voices every day.
Is there like one like personality or like celebrity that you kind of like adhere to for voicing your dog?
Eeyore.
That's good. What kind of dog?
He's like a lab pit bull bulldog mix, but he's got such like he always just like sits like this and his jowls hang down and he just stares at you and just stands.
Just sunken and
Yeah.
sullen, just like, oh yeah, that's funny.
Are you doing any bits? Am I allowed to ask you a question now?
Yeah, you can ask questions.
I don't know if I'm just completely off the mark with
It's a no. You
my
can
bit. I'm
ask
like
questions back.
joking about climate change.
It's I often am finding myself like giving examples too of if someone like is searching for their own answer, I'll give like a
Mhm.
um like, hey, like this is what it is to me, or like what it is like in the most recent weeks. I'm trying to think of what's the bit that I'm doing right now. I'm calling every meal snack for my daughters because that just like gets it across better. Because if I say dinner, then like I get more pushback. So everything is like we're doing dinner snack. That's a right now, and that kind of helps to speed it along. My youngest, it doesn't really matter. She's not picky at all, and she's just like whatever's in front. She's like a garbage
Yeah.
disposal. Everything's going down. But then my oldest, like she's starting to adopt like pushing back measures and standing up for herself and fighting for the whatever ground that she can find. So I'm making her sound like a tyrant, and she's totally not. But
She's
it
just finding
it
her way.
yeah, absolutely. She's very sweet. She's the best. But yeah, everything is a snack. Um, right now. That's it. Um, question for you: What, given the opportunity to replace the national anthem with any song on your playlist, what song would that be? And tell me a little bit about that.
Honestly, the song that always is playing in my head is "This Must Be the Place" by the Talking Heads, and just because that I don't know,
So
it's
it's
just
just like
it's a solid,
it's
solid.
filling the halls
Yeah.
of your brain. Excellent.
And
I like
something
it.
is wrong, but I know that this must be the place.
I like it. And then last get to know you question is how do we know each other?
Oh my gosh, from Vestavia Hills. I feel like we got to know each other like the best when we were hurdling and track and in that era of our lives. I like still think so fondly back to
Mhm.
our after school hang. But I know we know each other from a million things and we're friends, but I like remember like that connection, like all the people who I knew from there, from track that I actually like talked to and hung out with. Like those are the predominant memories I have with them. I don't know. It was so much fun.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think even beyond just like the friends that you have in athletics, if there's any kind of like specialization or like grouping like even further, like with hurdling or you're doing like specific events, I think especially too with hurdling, there's a lot of like we're shuffled over to the corner, and there's
We
a
never
lot of
had any guidance.
it's a no guidance, and it's probably different now, probably a different experience, but just like all right, let's go set them up and stretch and warm up and get ready and make each other laugh as we like sprint out of the blocks.
Did
Yeah,
you go to East or West?
I went to East.
Okay. I'm trying to think back. I'm like, can we actually identify when we first like knew each other?
Okay, I feel like I can name all of my elementary school teachers. I had Miss T Daly, And then
Oh, because there's S Daily too,
yeah,
right?
it was
Yeah, they're
there was
sisters.
twins that were kindergarten teachers. So I had T Daly. Then I had Miss Cook and Miss Bickley, and Miss Panea. And then in 4th and 5th grade, I had Miss Pate both times we looped.
Oh
And
yeah, I remember that.
then by then we're in middle school.
Middle
So
school. Well, we didn't have any of those together. But I feel like I knew you. We met in middle school. Well, we'd probably met before then, but I guess we first hung out with everybody in middle school. I
mhm.
don't know. Were you in this? Did you have Miss Beale, the science teacher?
Maybe.
You would
Yeah.
remember if you did
Uh
in 7th grade. Well, anyway, we don't have to get. I was just like, did we actually have a class together? I don't remember. Um,
That's fine. I catch myself doing that too, of like trying to pinpoint what was the moment like exactly like where
yeah.
that we would have like met for the first time. I think about that so, here and there. All right, well, that concludes our get to know you section. Let's get a little bit into your story and how you got uh, involved and started with environmental law. So just to kind of kick us off, could you draw like an A to B from like where you are now back to when you were first set on your course, with your career? Like, how did you kind of navigate that? Was there like a tipping off point of like, okay, I feel like I could draw the line to this moment in time? That was when I started down this environmental law track.
Yeah, honestly, maybe not like a direct moment, but I feel like my whole like life has been kind of a, you know,
Yeah,
dot dash up to where I am now. I mean, when I was little, I was worried about oil prices, like, and like, yeah, no, I like when I remember I would like talk to people's parents about it, and they were like, "Okay, this is weird."
you're
Um,
looking over the paper like at your parents like at breakfast. Like, can you
you're
believe?
like, how long are we gonna have oil reserves? And then like I always like rescued little animals and insects and all that stuff. I think at the end of middle school, I was thinking I wanted to be an engineer just because I was like decent with math and science as an 8th grader, which it only gets way harder from there. And I was like, maybe I want to do that, but it was probably actually doing that We the People, the like congressional kind of like constitutional debate hearing program my
Mhm.
senior year, where I was like, no, I definitely want to do more like people law or policy side of things. So I think like after doing like senior year was when I was definitely like, okay, I wanted to do like environmental work and thought it was engineering. But after going through that, it definitely felt like, because I was like doing a lot of like Bill of Rights stuff. There's a lot of like procedural law and First Amendment protections and, like right to trial, counsel, and all these things. It fascinated me to kind of read Supreme Court cases. Not really that well because, we're 17, 18, but
Yeah.
kind of that first exposure to how all of that works really like pushed me. And like working with some of the judges from Birmingham who volunteered to kind of help us when we had competitions and stuff was really, really cool. And my uncle used to live in Baton Rouge, and I would go visit him, and he was a hippie and was always, fired up about, you know, chemical plants and all those things in the industrial areas in Louisiana. I was always lived on a swamp, and so I kind of fell in love with Louisiana when I was little as well. And so when I was thinking of law school in Tulane, it all kind of clicked. Where like, yeah, I'm gonna go live there and work on stuff that I like really care about there because of all like the coastal land loss and water issues and environmental issues. Louisiana's just wild, but
Mhm.
yeah, those were like probably like the high school program, and then spending time with my uncle, going on the coast, and then kind of all that conglomerated. Um, I always kind of thought I was going to do something in the environmental sector, so yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And correct me if I'm off base here, but I think there's a lot of examples, especially when it comes to environmental law in Louisiana specifically for, I don't know, just like personal property rights and like catastrophes. Like obviously, Katrina is one example, but like different communities getting disproportionately affected by it's a factories, what have you. Um, is I would imagine that like studying at Tulane, like you have like that as a lens? Like, did that show up in your classes a lot?
Yeah, especially after like the first year of law school, everyone's like, it's horrible because you kind of do the standard basic courses that everyone takes, but Tulane has a lot of the clinical programs where you under the supervision of like clinical professors actually represent clients and do that kind of work. And so when I was in law school, I actually worked for the environmental law clinic and worked on suits and petitions, again, representing communities that were like fence line communities from refineries and big chemical plants in Louisiana. And it definitely, it's something that changed your view of like how the world works when you like live, or you don't live, but like you see the people who live in like the areas where all the manufacturing, raw materials, energy production is done. And it's like, it's heavy. But also the wetlands and the bayous, like even though all the land loss from oil production and the river engineering we've done, the coast has changed, but it's still so beautiful. And the community in Louisiana, for it being what it is so like friendly and supportive at this. It's, I don't know, it's such a complicated place to be, but everyone loves it so much.
It's
Obviously I don't speak for there's obviously a lot of very like horrible injustices, but at the same time, the land and the people are so woven together and love being in Louisiana at the same time. That's been an experience, which is beautiful.
That's really cool. It's sounding like resiliency for like culture, and um I like what you said about the interwoven part of the people in the land and everything like that. It's Was there any kind of local examples that stuck out to you when you were going through some of these courses? Um, I that it in At Maryville, it always kind of resonated with me a little bit more when we went somewhere on site, or um, had an example that was like very close to home, like for whatever the course work was, could have been anything. But was there anything that they talked about that stuck out to you, or even like solidified it further? Just the importance that it had on you?
I mean, I think I can, like, a lot of my education was like that here, because if you're in Louisiana, if you're in New Orleans studying environmental work, it's like the hotbed of where everything has gone wrong, but also where a lot of progress has been made. I think getting to go down, where the Mississippi River dumps into the Gulf, and going out and seeing the wetlands there and like where all the land has been lost, but also seeing where like breaks in the Mississippi River and sediment flow has like built new land in the last 3 years, and seeing just like how it's just such a, like, seeing like what you're actually trying to like do with natural processes, and like what all of these natural resources actually do on their own is pretty crazy. But at the same time, like the first time I went down and saw those wetlands, it was for a coastal and wetlands seminar, and we were driving back up, and the professor who taught that class, who is now my boss, wanted us to like stop and like meet with some of the communities who live south of New Orleans, who because like once you get south of New Orleans, it's one like long parish or county for the rest of the country. But it's like where most of the land has been lost, and like where a lot of the flooding after Katrina and after Hurricane Ida in 2021 have left a lot of places almost unlivable. And we went and had lunch with some folks who live in a community that's an unincorporated community, minority, lower income, and they're outside of like people that don't have like flood protection, that are outside of like the government bounds where like levees are, and like watching them all like be like, well, we don't have protection, so we have to like either raise our homes to 18 feet now to meet floodplain standards, or go, and we haven't been able to get a and so it's like looking at how awesome all these processes are, but then also remembering that not everybody will be able to stay in South Louisiana forever. And we meet with a lot of people who work as like oystermen and the crawfishermen. They're all they're all different,
Right.
but Yeah, no, and like seeing people who like can point out where the land has disappeared over the last few years and how their livelihoods have changed. And they're like, yeah, no one lives here anymore. It's very moving to see, you know, you see the issues like fence line communities upriver, but then you also see, people who like the Cajun and Creole population in the wetlands who are also losing their homes to sea level rise and erosion from oil and gas. So it's a very everything hits to home.
Hmm.
I think I just talked way too long, but there's so much here, and I feel very lucky to be like just jumping into all of it as someone who's not from Louisiana. But
Yeah.
I feel like every time I go anywhere, even in New Orleans, you learn something new or have some new connection with the place or the people that are in there, and that's a really cool. Like
Yeah, no
people, I
doubt.
feel like people love New Orleans, and a lot of people do party more when they come here, understandably. But like, just the whole city and everybody in it, it's just a very like welcoming, easy place to be.
Yeah, no, that I feel like it's something that people point to a lot whenever they visit or like make a move to New Orleans. Like there's some kind of, I don't know, just understanding about how people relate to one another and land and music and culture and food and everything like that. It's such a unique place. I personally have never been, so kind of kind of grandstanding.
5 hour drive down 59.
Yeah, I need to check it out. I don't. It's a I've had like a couple opportunities to go that just never really like panned out. But yeah,
Don't wait for like a big thing. Just go. Like
just
people
do
will
it.
always like, oh, should I come
You're
for
right.
Jazzfest for Mardi Gras? And it's like, well, I mean, if you can make that logistically work, but it's always like anytime that's not like the dead of July or August where it's not so hot. It's always a nice place to be. There's always fun stuff happening every day. You can find a festival or some sort of event to go to.
Yeah. And to be honest, I'd probably resonate with that a little bit better, like when it's not so inundated with people coming for all of the same reason, and it like I'm sure it's still gonna be crowded in like some of the more bustling like areas, but um, I think I would have a better time being just like walking about and interacting with
Mhm.
more people who are from there, especially since we've identified that quality that the city has. Yeah, absolutely. Are there um are there resources that you look to in interacting with these cases or work that we wouldn't kind of think of? Yeah, I think for me, in a lot of ways, I still think about um, law school and attorneys and everything, like just like big textbooks and everything, and I just like have a hard time conceptualizing some of the more realistic or like non-traditional resources. So what are those to you? Like what do you look to when you're, I don't know, just for anything really?
Yeah, I think, well, first off, I feel like I don't have a job similar to most attorneys or lawyers. Like there's like 4 lawyers and some research staff, but we're all like public interest people who we don't have clients. We don't, we do like legal services for free for say, so, it's like already we're kind of in a different
Mhm.
um, kind of mindset than
Different
other
sphere.
legal practices. We don't like sue people, which honestly I'm fine with. It is more fun to kind of work with everybody and try to do policy work. But I do some legal work too. I think honestly, I rely a lot on people who like work in research sciences, being in environmental law and doing environmental policy. It's a lot of, a lot of us who do environmental law don't have, science backgrounds. And that's a shame because the law can be very complicated. So
Mhm.
having, having people who understand science, but also having people who are like good with community engagement is really important because a lot of these lawsuits or legal issues that we work on are complex with water management or pollution, and you don't want to make assumptions for people about what they're going through or like what the actual testing shows, and having people who can really communicate just with just regular people and like with lawyers too, and also can communicate science and those kind of needs is really important, especially in like the more the public interest side of environmental work. But for everybody too, you got to have scientists. You also need to have people. It's really helpful, especially in a lot of the Louisiana cases, because or not cases, but instances. Since I don't do much don't do litigation. Just people who actually live in the community who can describe, because there'll be so much with flooding and other like related issues, just urban rain flooding too. New Orleans, well, we've been in a drought, but there's always water, and people who like really like intimately understand like, oh, this block, this street, like because the subsidence is flooded this much, and like I'm never gonna know those like little intricacies, and I'm like looking to see like, oh, like how should we like do this policy research and stuff. It's like I don't have insight, but the people are so tied to neighborhoods and places here. It's like, oh yeah, I'm here. My grandma lived that way, and like we remember how the flood and like the land like shifted like this, and that's not something that you can just like pick up and research in a case book. And even a lot of studies is oftentimes word of mouth is really, really helpful when you're kind of looking at these, looking at the people side and the resource and environmental side of things, because I don't have the experience to know how things change and what works. So
that's cool. There's a couple of things that stood out to me. There's one, the community element, like some of the anecdotal feels a little too narrow for what you were describing with like the community element, like with people identifying like, oh yes, I've lived here, and like generationally I've lived here. This is how the land around me has changed, like those sorts of things. But I like that the that's just like another example of the community like interacting with itself. um and then it sounds like a lot of like rare birds with the people who can like identify the science and communicate it well, because that's something that I'd have a hard time with with like with a lot of like research stuff, is that it's not very palatable in trying to communicate like what some of the main ideas are for like general public knowledge. So
mhm.
you need like a very charismatic like Bill Nye type to like convey like, hey, this is like how I would like narrowing down like some of these concepts. And like are there people that you've gotten to interact with that are just like the Mr. Rogers of um like rainfall in the parish and stuff like
Yeah,
that?
there's so many people who like have been in this for so many years. Like even some of the people I work with, have been doing this since I was going through documents the other day from '94, and I'm like, I wasn't even alive then, and you were here, like getting this like bayou restoration project back together to improve like flood management in like a North Shore neighborhood of New Orleans. It's just kind of like there are policy people that get it. There's also like I know people who have lived, you know, who live south of New Orleans who do boat tours and other things like that, who can read the land and the place like the back of their hand and can tell you just about everything you could ever want to know. Which is like with all the wetlands, the salt water, the fresh water, and all the infrastructure from government and like the business and industry interests there, like you have to know the land really well to be able to drive a boat around and kind of point things out. So it's really cool to like be out on the bayou and it's like, oh yeah, we have to cut exactly around this one, like a wide open space where I'm like, how do you even know where we are? It's like, oh, there's a pipeline here. We can't go that way, otherwise we'll hit it and it might explode. And you're like,
Hmm. Yeah.
great, I'm glad I'm not driving the boat.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's so cool to like, I don't know, it just sounds like everybody's got to have like a little bit of an just, I don't know, some kind of broad like skill set. Like they are like they have like some really cool like specialties and experts in fields, but they're also um That's it. They know exactly where the
Yeah.
fan boat needs to get to, and stuff. That's amazing. Um, are there aspects of either law school or your work, that didn't come to you as easily, that, like, you just the momentum or, the time that it took to grasp certain concepts or ways to approach, um, law school or work, like, that it was a little bit slower than you would have liked?
Yeah, when learning like how to like the legal writing and how different the structure and argumentation and substantiation has to be for all of that, I very much pushed back and I was like, no, I don't want to write like this. I don't want to do it. And it took me some time to rework how I did a lot of my thinking and writing. Um, I think that was also though because that was when I was taking, constitutional law and torts and property and like contracts. And I was like, this is not fun.
Mhm.
I think once I got something that I um, enjoyed more and had more interest in it, it came more naturally. Um, I also I didn't ever get that nervous speaking in public, even though I didn't do a ton of it, but presenting. But I think like I also had to like relearn the whole like confidence and like now it's law and different stakes. And I found myself really having a hard time like not psyching myself out before I'd like speak at like a presentation or some sort of
Mhm.
lecture or whatnot, and or like if like a government meeting or something like that. And because I was like, I'm young and these people, because like there are some people who know way more, and so it's always like not having the imposter syndrome and confidence. That's always, I feel like that's hard for anyone going
Yeah.
into work. And so like also being a student for so long too, when I finally, because I went straight out of undergrad into law school, and so last year I was like, oh, I'm like I'm working. And then all
Yeah.
during law school it was COVID. I like COVID hit
Oh
my when I
gosh, yeah.
was studying, and so both of my summer jobs in law school were fully remote. So like I worked in New Orleans and Boston, but I've still never been to Boston.
Mhm.
And so I never like had practice like doing stuff in court or in person and stuff like that because it was always on Zoom. And so that definitely was challenging to get more comfortable with that in public. But once you, I feel like once you like see how like to get to know people who work in government policy and then like just like listen enough to public news and things, you're like, oh, we're all just like people figuring this out one step at a time. Like
Mhm.
nobody's like that much like better at this. I mean, there are people obviously, and those people are usually famous or high up in politics. But I'm like, most of us are just like stumbling over,
Yeah.
trying to get our thoughts and ideas on a record before we leave.
You're
And
like, point of order, you can't do that." Yeah. No, that's funny. You mentioned, We the People. Do you feel like that, gave you a little bit of practicality, a little bit of skill there?
I think it definitely helped and kind of got me thinking about like presenting sort of these things in my own way. But it didn't I didn't get super nervous doing that. And then like the first time I spoke at something like a year ago, my knees locked out and I like had to like stop and I was like,
Oh
what is
gosh.
happening to me?
Yeah,
That definitely did help. But I feel like
yeah.
I lost it for a bit.
Yeah, no doubt. You mentioned, like, the COVID piece, and, I I don't know. It's I for a while, kind of struggled just being in public spaces, outside of, like, public speaking too, and I mean, especially if that is a really, foundational element of what you gotta do for your work, um, I can only imagine that it's gonna make it that much harder, but, what, what impact have you seen yourself, making? I like to ask people about their impact. I can imagine that, um, you've already talked about, like, the close-knit, element of the community and everything like that, but I'd be very interested to get your take on, like, I feel like a lot of and so you identified. Sorry, this is a really long-winded way to get this question out, but you already talked about one of your bits being like, "We did it. We changed the climate." And, and
I'm not
it
actually happy.
it's a yeah. So like that with that piece, what impact have you seen yourself making? I think it's, but in working in these spaces, it's gotta be really difficult and, like, can feel really restrictive or, just bogged down, and you're like, "Dang, like, whatever I do, there's something always going wrong." So what have you seen yourself being, like, successful in or having a hand in that's been, like, a big win?
Um, in certain positions, I think like I've done just actual direct work where oftentimes just like writing a letter, like doing housing work, and like you can, you know, draft up some things that you know a few laws and worked on them and send, and say like you can't discriminate and like actually like preventing, you know, people from being evicted. Like those are like small, like where you actually like it's not like I'm the special smart person to do it, but like oftentimes it is just like an extra step with a person who can like actually like assert things, even if it's not complicated, to like help someone's like day or like normal livelihood stay on track, which is really cool. I didn't do much of that, but that was one of the first moments when I was working during law school where I was like, oh, you can like these are actually like just like very normal like legal service things and questions that can change someone's like prevent
Yeah.
their lives from being upended. I think like with the environmental piece, it's harder to like say exactly because there's such a world of things happening, and being in Louisiana where there's not the friendliest environmental laws, and we're also one of the most vulnerable states to sea level rise and storms. It feels like, oh my God, like what are we doing? But also a lot of the policy people and government people who work here don't like most people don't have lawyers on staff, and so that's kind of like what we do is fill the space to be able to like connect nonprofit and government and those people and like help them understand the law and policy, and like if they're like, oh, can we do this, and we can actually like work with like in existing laws and programs and actually you know explain like, no, you can like use money to do more of this, or no, you can implement this sort of like flood control project, or you can like this is like what you should be asking your legislators to slip into a question, to be able to get funding or the authorization to, do green infrastructure. There's all like little things where like it's nothing huge, but like if you're not like if you don't know like a lot of the environmental laws and aren't sitting there and like thinking about like all the ways it applies in different places, and like just like you're not going to think of like, oh, we can do this too, and so we kind of like just jump into whatever we find, and we're like, no, you can be doing more to better manage floodwaters or like the river. And that's been really cool to kind of see little by little how like those partnerships actually lead to better implementation on the ground, which has been really cool. I do a lot of research right now because it's like a research fellowship, so I do like half of that kind of work and half of like more of the like legal research and stuff that kind of bends with the news and what's happening in the government. But yeah, um, it'll be interesting to see like what I do next, because it'll be like in a year from now I'll be doing something different. It'll be more permanent, and we'll see. But
It's
those are
yeah,
some big answers. I don't like talking about like what have I done, because it's like it's not, you know, uh, but it's been really rewarding. It's not what it's all about, but it is easier to at least feel like I'm trying to help every
mhm,
day.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like a lot of, like, equipping, like, helping people out to
Mhm.
I uh, I would kind of think that for a lot of those people, just not knowing, can and, like, not knowing what tools are at their disposal, has gotta feel so debilitating, and the ways that they feel like they can defend themselves and their rights and everything like that. So that's such a cool perspective to have. You mentioned, in a year you're going to be doing something different. What do you think that looks like in the future? What do you see yourself doing?
I really don't know, and that's the problem because I'm like I enjoy a lot of things. I definitely plan to be like I'm barred in Louisiana, so I will plan on staying here for a while. Um, but I'm one of those people where I'm like I went to law school, but I think I want to do policy primarily, which like people act like they're different. Like having like a legal background to do policy work is, I think, an interesting perspective, and I really like it a lot. And you get to work a lot more with people and like actually like see like laws and like things go through the legislator and actually watch like get the money funded, like figure out how that works, and then get it to the people who are doing implementation and make sure there's comply like that kind of stuff. Actually, like doing the legal side of implementation, which is basically what policy is at the end of the day. It just is so much more exciting. I think it's more like the on the ground aspect of it, and it's not the same just like drafting motions every day, which I would maybe want to do work like that, like do litigation, but there's not a lot of environmental litigation in Louisiana. Um, well, that's not like doing like the representative like for industry, which that's just would not be my thing. So
Mhm.
either maybe there's like a great job in environmental litigation that's like public interest focused that, but probably maybe doing policy work at a nonprofit or doing like advising in a government role. It's hard because like none of those jobs for like policy and stuff open up till they're like we need someone right now, and so I like don't really have much foresight on when and like where I'm gonna figure that out. But I'm excited. Some people I know like work in the governor's office now doing climate work, and that would be really cool. Who like used to work in the fellowship, so we'll see. um, I'm really open to anything.
Yeah, no doubt. Does it seem like there's an element of like you have to construct like some of that, like that, like there's not like a job right away that's like we need someone to do this like right now. Like, is it a little bit of carving that out for yourself?
Maybe a little bit, but also a lot of it just depends on either like if government has funding to do things or depending on how grants work for
Yeah.
nonprofits. Oftentimes they're pretty solid positions, but there'll be a new grant and a new program, like with all the like federal spending from the Inflation Reduction Act and infrastructure laws, which is I just live in that realm all the time. Like, there's all these new fundings for like, oh, you're going to be like the resilience specialist, or FEMA's going to hire a bunch of new people to do flood work. Like this government agency, or like, oh, we have a new grant to help the government do all this resilience work. So it really kind of also there's some things I think would always be around, but there's also a lot of new positions because I feel like climate and resilience impacts everything. So I feel like that kind of field of work is expanding. So it doesn't have to be maybe specifically environmental, like housing and urban development, like in those sorts of community development um, agencies or nonprofits are kind of focusing on like housing and climate and flood resilience, that kind of stuff. So it all seems to kind of, it's all working in together. As it should. We should all be planning to be better prepared for disasters.
Yes.
My PSA. Everyone check
Yes.
your flood maps.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's awesome. Is there to or when you were in law school, were there any kind of really silly laws that you learned about that surprised you? Like I always remember the urban legend of like you can't drive barefoot, or you just like really like ridiculous, like arbitrary laws like that. Was there anything that you like learned about that kind of like took you out of like that moment for a second? You're like, this is so crazy and ridiculous.
Honestly, there are a few, but they're kind of like jarring and not ones that would be fun to talk about, like old laws on the books in southern states. There are some things that like aren't in action anymore, but you're like, why is this still
Yeah.
like why did
Mm-hmm. I
but there also are a lot of there's a lot of silly rules. I don't even know where I'm like scanning back through when I was studying for the bar and I was like, what all what all did I read back then? Um One thing that's crazy is that like some states don't like this is not really a law, but the lack of laws that are in place too. That's one thing that feel like I don't know. You're always like, oh, there's someone who's going to take care of that or do that in the government or this, and that. And you find out that you're like, that's not the case. There's
oh
no like guarantee. Like Louisiana doesn't have a water management law. Like that's what we're kind of like looking at right now. I'm like, no one's monitoring how much water we use. And there are other states
oh
that
man.
don't either. And you're like, this is not
And
a
it's
hello.
yeah, a bit of like, well, not not my circus, not my monkeys, and just you the assuming like it's somebody else is gonna handle it. Yeah, that's yeah,
Oh,
you
I thought of one. Louisiana is like the only state where like which dog if a dog bites you this is horrible but like we like I'm not saying this is good but we are the only state where like if your dog does like cause any sort of damage at all like the owner is strictly liable. Like most times there's like a standard where it's like, oh, this happened, like if anything, like we're like the least friendly to like dog incident state, which made me sad
mm,
because the bar exam questions had like hypos about you're running with your dog on the levee on the river. And I'm like, no. I'm like don't do that. And it's like some this you can't tell the dog was like provoked in the hypo and you're like, well, it doesn't matter because that's how our tort law works.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's there's a lot, but of course the dog one is the one that pops into my head first.
That's the real policy change that we need. We need to advocate for the dogs. But so they should be able to stand their ground and stand up for themselves. Um, well, good deal. Thank you so much for talking about all of that. Obviously, very important work. And it makes me feel much smarter as an interviewer when I can just like let people talk, and it's very clear. Like, okay, good. It's I like
Sorry if I
I
talk too much. I like gush when
no no
people
no.
talk about New Orleans and stuff. Like I can't ever shut up about it.
Well, it just speaks to the level of like regard that you hold like New Orleans in, and the importance that um the sense of importance that you've got for the work that you're doing too. So it makes me feel good that there are people like you out there doing the things that you're doing and advocating for those things because they're really important. Um, but yeah, that's awesome.
That's why I always
Um,
say, even no matter where you lie on political spectrum or what you do for a living, like if we don't have a safe and healthy place for us all to live, then what else can we do without that as a
yeah.
basis? So it's definitely been a cool way to connect with so many people. And
Mhm.
then, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
sorry.
I can imagine. I went to Maryville College, and it's like right, kind of like nestled in the Smokies, and you know, environmental science and like and everything like that is just so like integral in how like so many different courses and everything like that. It's just so so central to how people interact with coursework in general and education and stuff. And it resonates with me. But like seeing it applied to like different environments as well is such a cool thing. Like getting to see that
Yeah.
same level of passion for a completely different area is so cool. Um, I do have a question, and I've liked this tradition so far. So what we've done is we ask each guest to extend a question to the next guest, have them answer it, and then we continue the cycle onward. A bit of a pay it forward situation in kind of a podcast drive-through situation. So, how do you like your steak cooked? And that comes from Jack Townsend. He's the executive chef at Diamond Jack Restaurant in Maryville, Tennessee. But how do you like your steak cooked?
Tell Jack I'm sorry, I'm vegetarian.
Well, that's great.
That's amazing. That's a perfect question. Okay, 12 years ago when I had my last steak, medium rare was always my choice.
Nice.
So
very cool. Is there
all the folks out there still eating medium rare?
Yeah. It's excellent. So it would be medium rare. You're a vegetarian. Being a vegetarian, are there different are there any foods that you find yourself like longing for and like having to like try and scratch an itch in like a particular way? My aunt has been a vegetarian for, I don't know, but it's like 40. I won't even venture to guess like for how long it was. But it's that she has been a vegetarian for a very long time, and she still like finds like bacon to be like pretty appetizing, but like not really like a whole bunch of other stuff. Is there anything like that for you?
The chicken fingers, I guess, are the one thing. But honestly, it wasn't that hard. Like it's been like 10, 11 years, I think, and I don't have too many issues. Bacon still smells good though. I feel like I still think bacon smells delicious, but I don't have the desire to eat it. But chicken fingers and some fried chicken, it's like Popeyes.
Yeah.
It smells so good. And there's, Louisiana kitchen.
Yeah. No. Okay. So, what is it like then being a vegetarian in Louisiana? Like, do you have difficulty like in your approach, like finding like good food to eat? I would imagine it's not very hard because there's just so much good food, but I want to hear your take.
I feel like outside of New Orleans, it would be harder. I do eat seafood sometimes now, which I didn't before I moved here, but it was like, this is like as fresh and close to home as you can get a lot of this stuff. But New Orleans, no, everything is good. That's one thing too. People, I'm like, you can't have a restaurant here and have it not be good. So there's like a few vegetarian places that I like, but most places I go, it's really not that hard.
Yeah.
But sometimes I do like travel for like, meetings and stuff, and you're going west of Lafayette and you're like, we have to be particular about, like, does anyone want to find a Middle Eastern or Mediterranean restaurant that we could go to? But even then, it's really not that bad.
Nice. That's
hard. Good. It's great food.
Yeah. No doubt. Do you, there's a guy that pops up on my TikTok all the time, and I follow, Hold the Mayo. Have you seen him? It's so funny. I have never wanted to be from New Orleans more than like watching his videos, and he just walking around at like it's so funny. He seems like such a character. But yeah, he makes me laugh every time too. Well, thank you for answering how you like your steak cooked. But I want to give you the opportunity to ask a question to the next guest. And I don't know. I might have an idea of who it'll be, but I don't typically reveal at the end of the episode. But what would you like to ask?
What is your favorite bird and why?
Favorite bird and why? I like that a lot.
Also, I was watching John Oliver's last week tonight, and he's talking about like New Zealand has a bird of the century voting contest going on right now. And so I've been thinking a lot about migratory birds this week.
Nice.
And they're all making their way down, and Louisiana, like the Mississippi River corridor is where a lot of the migratory birds pass. every year. So like being down here, there's so many crazy birds just flying around. There's like herons that nest on my like on the street I used to live on,
Hmm.
like tall birds. Like it's crazy. So yeah, I wanted people to talk about birds next time.
Nice. Birds. Excellent. Love it. Is there any like front runner in the voting for bird of the century? Like, have you looked?
Well, I think there is because John Oliver has been running an aggressive campaign about it. He's like, I want to interfere in a foreign election.
That.
So he's doing a bird interference.
Oh my gosh, that's
I would not
crazy.
be able to pronounce the name of this bird if I tried. But yeah.
That's hilarious. We'll have to find the bird. I'm gonna Google it right now. What's a bird of the century? Bird of the century 2023.
If you go to votethisbird.com, that's the one that the Tonight Show campaign is doing.
We got bird of the year organization New Zealand.
Yeah, but this one's bird of the century. This year it's different. Or it's like the same org but a different voting.
Yeah, bird of the century contestants. Oh, they're all like I want to say Maori, but I don't know if that is correct. It looks like
A lot
words
of them
that,
are.
yeah.
The Pute Katiki is the one. If you just another time go to votethisbird.com and you'll just see the
Oh my
bird.
gosh, these are some real characters. Well, I love it. Nice, good deal. Well, we'll ask the next guest. What's your favorite bird and why? That's a great question. Haley, it's been such an honor and a treat to have you here. Anything that you want to close us out with before we wrap up?
Not particularly. It's been really great to talk to you, and I appreciate you just letting me nerd out about New Orleans for a bit. And also, it was great to hear a little bit about how you're doing and hearing about your fam. I hope to see you next time I'm in Birmingham.
Absolutely.
Let's close everyone out with who dat. That's
Love
all.
it.
That's all I got for right now.
It's a who dat. Love to see it. All right. Well, that is going to conclude episode 18 of When I Was Your Age. Thank you so much for listening this far. If you have made it to this point in the episode, you can leave a bird emoji on the Instagram post, and that will let me know that you have listened to the whole thing. But thank you so much for making it this far, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.